Wonderful. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for SRQ Strong's community conversation entitled Welcoming Back Our Neighbors from Incarceration to Community. I think for those of you who tuned in a few minutes ago, Annalise mentioned we ask that everybody keep their mics muted until the end of the program when we have our open conversation and discussion, and welcome everybody to engage then. But in the meanwhile, if anyone has any questions or comments, please use the chat function, put them in the chat, and we'll return to them during the session, the part of this evening when we talk with everybody and answer people's questions and hear about your experiences on the topic. Also, Annalise mentioned that we are recording the conversation and it is being streamed on Facebook Live. And so it'll be available after viewing, after this evening's conversation. But if anybody does not want to be recorded, we invite you to turn your cameras off now or at any point and then turn them back on. So my name is Giselle Stolper, and I'll be your facilitator for this evening's conversation. I'm the former CEO of a New York City mental health organization who semi-retired to Manatee County about 6 years ago now. I'm currently a consultant for Centerstone, which is a community behavioral health center providing mental health and addiction services in Sarasota, Manatee counties, and a few other counties on the Sun Coast. I'm also a proud founding member of SRQ Strong, a growing group of Sarasota and Manatee County neighbors committed to learning about trauma and responding to its impact. I see you put up, Annalise, our mission. We all know that exposure to adverse childhood experiences and traumatic events at any age can have significant impact on one's daily functioning or day-to-day life or relationships, on physical and mental health. I'm just looking here. I'm sorry, Annalise, can we still see each other, or you've put up the, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
We can see you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you can see me. Okay. I
Yep.
can't see you, but that's okay. And so, and that's why Sarasota Strong, SRQ Strong really came to be, to promote community-wide trauma awareness through healing, action, leadership, and education. And one of our signature education activities is our community conversation series, such as tonight, where we shine the spotlight on current issues involving trauma and affecting members of our community. Through open dialogue, learning from experts, listening and learning from each other, our goal and our mission is to create a community that cares for itself. So tonight, we're going to be focusing on the impact of trauma and its relationship to people who are returning to life in the community and to home after a stay in jail or in prison. Just to give a very, very brief background or set the context, the CDC reports that 97% of inmates have at least one traumatic childhood experience, and as many as 60% experience PTSD. Studies have shown the strong connection between experiencing trauma in early years and a person's later involvement in the criminal justice system. These studies have also shown that the effects of these early traumas can carry over into incarceration while a person is in jail or prison. And for some individuals, the jail or prison or detention center experience in and of itself is traumatizing or re-traumatizing. And that's something that people often talk about, and we may hear a bit about that from Mark, who's going to be joining us as a speaker later. And while we all know the relationship, it's really been well documented between traumatic experiences prior to and during incarceration, not as well explored have been the trauma and loss that individuals experience after leaving jail and returning home. And by loss, I mean the loss of resources like income, employment, housing, transportation, but also social and emotional loss, the loss of friendship and support of family members, friends, and sometimes neighbors. So tonight, we're going to hear from 3 speakers who will talk about, from different perspectives, what the impact of trauma and what life has been like, the challenges that they've experienced returning from prison or jail back to their communities and back to their homes and community life. So our first speaker will be Mark. Mark is a resident of a program here in Manatee, Sarasota County called Project 180, and you'll be hearing more about the wonderful services and programs that Project 180 offers in our community. And Mark's going to talk about a little bit about his experience in prison, before prison, and what it's been like to return home to the community. Our second speaker is Barbara Richards, who's the president and CEO of Project 180, which is a prison reentry program in Sarasota County. For a good period of her life, Barbara worked and lived in San Francisco in a neighborhood that she characterized, describing it by extreme poverty on one side of the hill and upper middle class wealth on the other side. I guess you were driving, Barbara, you said, and was listening to an NPR radio show providing facts that actually had a profound impact on where she went with her career. And the facts that she heard that really affected her was that for every one Black man in college, there were 5 Black men in prison or jail. Almost immediately, she began volunteering in the San Francisco Sheriff's Department in the felony wing, and later taught GED in 3 other San Francisco jails. Barbara moved to Tallahassee in 2004 to get her Master of Science degree in criminology and criminal justice at Florida State University. And in 2007, she moved to Sarasota area where she founded Project 80 in 2008. And our third speaker tonight is Harold Young. Harold is the former director of the Maryland office of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, commonly known as HUD. He worked for 31 years enforcing the fair housing laws and oversaw the development of housing, community, and economic development projects through local government and nonprofits. In Sarasota, Harold's worked closely with the Light of the World Church and has curated a resource guide for the very topic that we'll be discussing tonight. So without further ado, let me turn this over to Mark, who will be talking about his personal story. So Mark.
Hello. What else?
Well, Mark and I decided that I would interview him. So we're gonna have a few questions and answers here. So Mark, do you want to start by talking about your childhood a bit?
Growing up, I bounced around a lot, moved around a lot. My mother was on the run for the first 8 years of my life. She was bad into drugs and stuff. She never there. My father went to prison when I was like 3 years old for.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mark. It looks like a few people can't hear you. Is there a way we can move him closer to the microphone?
I can move it. Better?
Yeah,
It should
that's
be
a little
better.
bit. Is that better for everyone,
Yeah.
hopefully?
I have a problem talking now. Person. But, so my mom, for the first 8 years of my life, and then my dad went to prison when I was younger, when I was about 3 years old, and then I bounced around. I got in trouble my first time when I was 10 years old, and then I lived with family members all over the place, and it was always like, oh, I can't handle him, he's out of control. And go to the next one. And then next thing you know, about 14 years old, I was in the system. And then I went to prison. I turned 16, came home, was home. I did 3 years, came home in 2006, went back to prison, came home in 2010, or came home in 2006, 2010, went back to prison, came home in 2016, was home 124 days, and went right back to prison. I would like when I came home in 2006, I was living in the woods with my mother, and they had some friends out there, and we lived in the woods. And yeah, I was trying to do, I had in my mind that I wanted to do right, but yeah, I just went right back to the only thing I knew how to do. And then that led me right back to prison. And yeah, I mean, since I came home, Project 180's been a blessing. I ain't no time at home, almost 10 months. There ain't no telling where I would be at or what would be going. Like Dave showed, our biggest thing is coming home is a support system. I believe is like having people there on your team, people that care, people that want to help you, people that like love, and a lot of times that's some things that we don't get, especially in that lifestyle. When you're in prison, it's just like you're not alive, you're just existing. That's what we used to always say, you're just existing, because it's the outside world's still going while you're at a standstill. And that's your life in there. There's a whole other world in there. And the lady earlier said something about PTSD and stuff, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of right, because I go to Walmart or something, and I get around a crowd of people, or go to meetings and stuff, and I'm still trying to be able to be around a crowd of people. And there's been a couple times I feel like I'm about to have a panic attack. People get around me, get close. So yeah, that sparked a little light in my head, like, hey, yeah, she may be right about that. Never even realized that until just recently. So
I'm going to ask another question here, maybe just to go a little deeper into when you were a kid and when you were out, and people were talking about,
We can't hear you now, Barbara.
when you were a kid and moving around and family members and others said that they could not control you, did you feel like you had control over yourself?
no, I felt like I didn't care. I was gonna do what I wanted to do, and it didn't matter. Like nobody what anybody said even mattered. It was just, yeah, I'm gonna do what I want to do, how I want to do it.
So when I taught in the jail for 5 or 6 years, one of the men there told me something I've never forgotten. He said, if no one cares about me, why should I care about myself?
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I've always had that mindset, and that's one thing I've learned over the years to grow out of, because like it's a dog eat dog world. That's what I've always been raised. It's a dog eat dog world, and I'm gonna eat you before you eat me. And maybe that's why we survive so good in prison, because it's like we don't care about the next man. It's like it's either you or it's me.
So you spent time in juvenile and then you went to adult prison. What's the main differences between these two experiences?
Juvenile prison is more like they want you to go to school, but there's more fighting, physical fighting. In adult prison, it's more about respect, and they would rather stab you or hurt you than fight you. There's a big difference. Like when you're in juvenile prison, you get into fights about stupid little things like people looking at you funny, or you got to try to be the bigger man. In prison, it's kind of the same, but not really. It's more about respect and minding your own business. I mean, and the guards are a lot worse. The guards are a lot worse.
In adult prison.
Yeah, in adult prison.
So one of the other things I used to hear from a lot of guys and still do is they felt like they had lost so much time in their lives by being locked up. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, being locked up, I definitely lost a lot of my life. I've 16 and a half years, I've been in and out of the system. I've gotten behind the fence and I've lost everything. My kids, my mom, my father, uncle, I've lost, and most of them died from drugs. My daughter doesn't want nothing to do with me because I haven't seen her since she was 3 weeks old. Like I haven't really been able to experience or know anything about life, because when you're in prison or in the system, they pay you for your bills, they pay for everything. So it's like you don't really know the meanings of responsibilities and the way of life out here.
Thank you. So you mentioned that you were in homeless. Can you talk about what that looks like?
Being homeless was just, we lived in a tent, we went down to the park on Jacaranda, which is in Venice, and take showers there at a park that's there. And we would take showers, go to my Aunt Rhonda's house and have to wash clothes, wash our laundry there. There was like probably about 6 of us that lived back there. And there's been times where they'd shut down the bathrooms at the park and I would take a shower behind the courthouse. I'd lather up with soap and jump in the pond and come out and do it again and jump back in the pond. And it's go take our food stamps and go get a bunch of ice, a couple bags of ice, and put it in the cooler and to keep our food cold and our drinks cold, and then like wake up in the morning and be all sticky because the dew outside, and so it's I don't really know how to explain it because I used to be like, oh, it's just camping, but yeah, after about 3 months, 4 months of that, gets aggravating,
So not really the preferred way. Right?
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Your experiences in your life, you talked about your how you found out about Project 180 and
Barbara, can you speak into the mic a little bit more? I'm trying to translate them into the chat, but some it's really hard to hear.
I'm so sorry. Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, everybody. So given your experiences and never really haven't had a lot of stability in your housing and that sort of thing, can you talk about how you found out about Project 180 and kind of how things have changed since you've gone into it?
Well, I came home from prison and I was in the county jail and I was trying to find a program. I couldn't, and somebody told me about Project 180, so I had to contact programs. And I contacted programs, and a lady named Miss Michelle and Mr. Fernando, they came up and gave me a card and told me with Mike Southwick and Barbara's number on it, Project 180's number, and told me to contact them. I contacted them. They came up, interviewed me, And before they left, I was like, what do you think the chances of me getting accepted to the program is? And they're like, oh, you're accepting. And then I was like, okay, well, it'll be 2 or 3 weeks until I get out. The next, like, not even 24 hours later, they're calling me to roll it up. And I was like, holy cow. And then I got out. They helped me get a phone. They helped me get my ID. They helped me find a job. They were patient. They like, there's been times in the past 10 months where I just want to give up and just be like, I can't do it no more. But they give love and encouragement and are there for us, never turn their back on us. They, help uplift us and lead us in the right direction. And when I first came home, I didn't think I was gonna make it 2 months, 3 months. I figured, that's the first sign of them getting ready to kick me out. I'm gonna run, but they've never once have they been like turned their back on me. They've done nothing but show love and support and been there for us. And it's I always used to think that, like, with my record, oh, I can't get a job and this and that. And they've been there and showed me that it can be done. You just got to do it. You got to work for it.
It's really easy to be done with somebody who's as cool as Mark is. I have to say, it's wonderful to be able to work with him. So what have you done since we've been?
I can't hear.
You hear?
Couldn't hear.
What have you gained since you've been out of prison that you're going to take forward with you in life, like internally, not things, but like changes you've made?
I've learned, like, I've seen the positive in life. I've learned to responsibilities, being held accountable, like things like, finding finding a job, that there is people that are out there that do care about you, that it's not when somebody comes up to talk to you and tries to introduce yourself to you or something, there's not an alternative motive behind it. I've learned that, I've learned how to responsibilities, I've learned like to I guess, money management, how to juggle my money and how to know how to when to get something, separate your needs from your wants and stuff.
That's great. Thank you.
Looking forward to.
Or would you have any other questions for Mark?
Just this one last question. What are you looking forward to the rest of your future?
Well, I'm really looking forward to getting out and starting to do it on my own and really learn what there is out there, because I feel like I'm ready, but I don't know. But I want to see what the world has to hold, and I feel like I owe it to Project 180 and to the people that do care to show them where I've come from and what their progress, their work, that their hard work does help. I really don't know how to word it. I'm kind of lost.
Just to give you a little feedback, thank you so much, Mark. I'm looking at the chat while you're speaking, and I just wanted you to kind of know that there are people there that are saying, wow, wow, it's such personal and awareness and growth that you really are remarkable. And to hear your story and from where you were to where you are now, really is an inspiration. And people are saying congratulations on your incredible accomplishments. Your hard work was so obvious. So I just wanted to give you that immediate feedback. Listening to your story really means a lot for us. And before we go on to Barbara, I do want to just somebody in our chat mentioned the two folks that the peer, I think they're peer case managers or peer navigators who you mentioned, Michelle and Fernando, and how they helped you. I mean, I think that's an important point that we need to keep in mind as we design programs and services that help people leaving jail and going into the community. That, you know, when you talk about all of the times that you got out and then went back and then got out and then went back and you know, within short periods of time, that this time it was different. And it was different because they were able to connect you with Project 180 and then the remarkable work of Project 180. But I think it really, it shows the importance of having that connection while you're still in jail before you leave, back to supports and resources, you know, in the community, as opposed to having to go it alone. So, you know, I think that that's an important kind of program that for people who design programs to help ease reentry, it's important for us to keep in mind. So thank you so much, Mark. And I'm sure there'll be other questions during our question and answer period. But for right now, so thank you. I'd like to move on to Barbara,
Yes,
if I may. Barbara, are you ready to take the screen now?
I am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right. Thanks so much. Now, can everybody hear me as I'm facing the computer? Is it a little better? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So I wanted to bring the conversation back to the name of this evening's presentation by Sarasota Strong, and to thank you all for having both Mark and me here. And that is welcoming back our neighbors from incarceration to community. And that is a very important point to me. When I'm referring to individuals who are incarcerated, I almost always refer to them as our neighbors who are returning. And it touches on a lot of things for Project 180, that we're really welcoming back people who belong here. These are people who are no longer under the purview of the state or the government, but there are neighbors who might need a little help getting started again, because incarceration is it's a life interrupter. And when someone goes away, they lose just about everything. So it's a traumatic experience, as I think that we've all recognized by now, and listening to what Mark had to face in both juvenile and in adult prison. And most of the men, not everyone, but most of the men in our program did have adverse childhood experiences when they were young. And we haven't officially tracked the numbers yet, but because of this experience, I gave instructions to one of my staff members to begin tallying those, so that we know when people come into our residential program, we'll actually know how many they've faced, and we can give some numbers to people like this group. We know that people have experienced, our residents have experienced as children, beatings, sexual assaults, emotional abuse, and neglect. And the traumas that they faced in childhood were really a setup. They were a setup for misbehavior in school. How can you pay attention in school when you are being abused at home, or perhaps you are hungry? When I was teaching in the San Francisco County jail system, I had a wonderful student named Dennis, who was really good in math. And I believe we were studying square roots at that time. This was a GED class. And I just kind of took him aside and I said, Dennis, what are you doing in here? You know, you're so smart. What's going on for you? And he said, well, I dropped out of school in 2nd grade. That's 2nd grade, not 7th. And I said, what happened? And he said, I was just too hungry to pay attention in class. I couldn't focus. So these are the folks we've locked up. Misbehavior in school and at home eventually led to the criminal justice system for a lot of our residents. And then after the trauma of incarceration, they face reentry. And we know for sure that people who do not have a connection on the outside face tremendous anxiety prior to coming home. The last few days People are in disbelief. That they're really actually going to get out. They feel, again, this tremendous anxiety. Some people go into depression. Other people feel threatened sometimes by other people who are not going home. And if you have nobody to go home to, it goes back to that old thing of, if there's nobody who cares about you, why should you care about yourself? And then when you hit the streets, if the uphill climb is too difficult, then comes what the guys call the F it factor. It's just like, why should I care? This is too hard. I'm going to go back to something that I know. And then the cycle starts all over again of being, of misbehaving in, the public arena and getting rearrested and incarcerated again. So what's behind Project 180's efforts is to assist people in stabilizing when they come back, because that's really one of the roots of the problem. We do something called cherry picking. We make sure that the people who are coming into our program don't have to be convinced that they want a different life. They're ready for this, and that helps protect the people who are already in the program, because the individuals in our program are all individuals who suffer from the disease of addiction. So if we bring in someone who's actively using, that can upset the lives of everybody else in the program. So we're very careful about that. So the reentry experience is an experience not just for the individual, it's also an experience for the community. Because if reentry is not successful, it results in poverty, homelessness, unemployment, health crises, reliance on other emergency services, and criminal behavior, of course. So our vision at Project 180 is that we want to reduce poverty, homelessness, unemployment, and criminal behavior among formerly incarcerated citizens. And we do that through 6 pillars of stability, which I will get to in just a moment, but I'd like to just touch on homelessness and unemployment and poverty for a moment. With regard to homelessness, one is more likely to become homeless if he or she has been incarcerated. And if one has been incarcerated, one is more likely to become homeless. So that becomes a vicious cycle as well. In terms of unemployment, things are a lot better now than they have been in the past. We say, and I think pretty truthfully, that anybody who wants a job can find a job. And we have a bank of employers who will hire as second chance employers, but many of them are very reluctant to talk about it. So one of the things that I do before I hire someone to do a job around my house or elsewhere is I will ask, do you hire formerly incarcerated citizens? Will you hire somebody with a felony? And if they say no, I let them know that I would prefer to work with someone who will. That helps get the word out that there are individuals out here who support that. Another marker of unsuccessful reentry is poverty. And Project 180 has 2 classes that we offer in the Sarasota County Jail, and we're just about, now that we're getting past COVID, starting to make inroads with the prison system again to offer them there. One is a financial literacy course, and one is a CEO workforce education class that we offer in conjunction with Career Source Suncoast. And in these classes, we survey all of our students, and we ask, what was your income prior to employment? About 38% typically will say less than $12,000 a year. Another 30 some odd percent made between $12,000 and $36,000 prior to incarceration. And that puts them squarely into low to moderate income category. That means about 75% of our students who are in jail are low to moderate income. So people were impoverished before they went in, and when they come out, the same thing happens. It's very difficult to get one's feet on the ground, especially if the person is actively using with the disease of addiction. It is a chronic disease that comes back over and over again. One's brain is constantly saying, oh, it's okay to use. That's all right. You can go out. Everything is going to be just fine. And of course, it just perpetuates the disease. And about 75 to 90% of all individuals who are incarcerated have the disease of addiction. So that tells us that we really don't have a crime problem. We have a disease problem, a drug addiction disease problem. And all of these markers, all of these different factors really affect the entire community. That's why I said that reentry is really a community event, not just an individual event. So taking all of this into consideration, Project 180 has structured our program, our residential program in particular, to sway people away from the path of unsuccessful reentry so that they can really reintegrate into the community and live stable, productive lives. So we help our residents with 6 different pillars of stability. The first is active recovery from drugs and alcohol, because without being in active recovery, housing is not possible because you won't have any money. You'll be spending it all on drugs in order to satisfy your habit. You won't have money for rent. You'll get kicked out, evictions, etc., making it harder to get housing down the road. You won't be able to keep a job because you don't show up in the morning on time. You might steal at work. It's a vicious cycle, and so on. So we focus on these different pillars, and recovery is number 1. Second is housing. Project 180 has 2 houses, and I'd like to give a shout out to the Charles and Marjorie Barancic Foundation, who purchased our first home for us. We call it Nick's House. And the second house we have just purchased. We signed on December, I think it was 28th or 29th. And that was through the help of Community Foundation of Sarasota County. And we're very grateful for the generosity of both of these foundations. We have 11 beds, and we are looking to grow to another house in mid-year in order to meet the tremendous need in our community for the program that Project 180 offers. Well, at that time, we'll have 17 beds. The third pillar of stability is employment. And as I mentioned, we have a bank of employers, and we work to focus on workforce education for individuals who are still incarcerated. And we provide introductions for our residents to a lot of the employers around town who are second chance employers. We also focus on finances. We charge $200 a week in program fees, and we deliberately do not call it rent because it includes so many other things than just stable housing. Mark mentioned a lot of those: food, clothing, tools to get started at work, telephone, opportunities in the community. And we do have a part of that program where we offer up to $1,000 per resident in matching funds so that he can pay off the fees and fines that prevent him from restoring his license, his driver's license. And once somebody has a driver's license, they'll get promotions and raises at work and better job opportunities. So one of the reasons we provide so much is so the guys can save money, so that they have 3 months of a safety net as they go out into the community upon graduation. We like it when they can buy a vehicle before they leave, so they have a reliable mode of transportation. And eventually, of course, they can get an apartment or rent a house. And one of our men, who I would not say is quite typical, but he comes back and speaks to the guys and tells them to take advantage of everything we have to offer. He was able to save almost $15,000 before he left. He was in the program for about 14, 15 months, and he's now working as a foreman in a large construction company out of Texas that is currently working in Florida to rebuild after Hurricane Ian. He has a wonderful job, and he's just a great guy. Our fifth pillar is relationships. First, one's relationship with himself. After being in active addiction, a lot of men talk about losing themselves, about not knowing who they are, and they're starting really from the ground up internally, just as they are materially on the outside. The second part of the relationship pillar is, if it's appropriate and it's welcome, we assist with family reunification. Sometimes the family's been the problem, so it's not always a great idea for someone to reunify with them. But many of the guys have reunified with their children. They have gotten on better terms with their former spouses or girlfriends, with their parents. And it's a really wonderful thing to see when families are restored. And finally, the relationship with the community is very important. This happens at our lecture series a lot. We hold a lecture series every year called Strong Voices, and it's a required day, a mandatory day for everyone in the program to go. And we get a lot of heels digging in, not really wanting to go. What's it going to be like? And they know that the state attorney is probably going to be there, people from the sheriff's office, probation, and judges, sometimes the same judges that sent them to prison. And when they go, they talk to these folks and they realize that the judges and the system isn't really the problem. The problem really is that they have needed to get past that part in their lives and become a part of the bigger community, and they do it, and it's a wonderful experience for them. They come back and they talk about how I met Judge so-and-so, he put me in prison and we talked about it, and I understand why you did it. So it builds bridges between communities, which is great. People who have been incarcerated and people who have not. And the final pillar is health. For now, we have funds that are still remaining from a 100 Women Who Care donation. And we have been able to offer over the last couple of years $1,000 for medical, dental, vision, and mental health needs for our residents. Those funds are dwindling, but we're hoping we can find another grant somewhere so that we can start that up. And this has been for dentists, for physicals, people who haven't had physicals for 15, 20, 25, 30 years, for minor surgeries, for, gosh, I think we've even used it for chiropractic, all sorts of different things that people need. We also get mental health evaluations for individuals who have been mandated by the court to have a mental health evaluation. And unfortunately, the court may mandate it, but none of them are free. So Project 180 helps pay for that, and for prescriptions for medications that will help individuals stabilize if they do have a mental health disorder that can be helped by medication. And I would like to give a shout out to Eyeglass World. Eyeglass World offers a free vision exam and free pair of eyeglasses to all of our guys. So that's the stabilization process that we help our men go through. And what that does is it allows them to take a breath after incarceration, to really consciously consider the kind of man they want to be, how they want to live their lives, and how they can make a plan going forward, and of course, how they can be better neighbors. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. And I'm sure people have questions and comments. And so I just want to remind everybody, please hold your questions and comments just for another few minutes till we hear from our third speaker, and then we'll be able to address them all. So thank you. And Harold, if we can go on to you now, that would be wonderful.
Well, thank you very much. Boy, my heart is humbled just to hear Mark's story and know of the wonderful job that Project 180 does. Just great people, great staff, and Barbara is extraordinary. For the next few minutes, I'm going to widen the story a bit, talk a little bit about the backstory of mass incarceration in the United States. I grew up in the DC metropolitan area. And at 24, I got married and I moved to Baltimore, where I lived for 51 years and made my way here in the last 3.5 years in Sarasota. The United States has the largest rate of incarceration. Think about this. The US makes up 5% of the world's total population, but has 25% of the world's prison population. And since 1970, the population of incarcerated persons has increased 700% from 338,000 to 2.3 million in 2028. So the question I always ask myself, being a Black man, African-American, how do Black men fare in these statistics? Well, this gentleman by the name of Paul Butler wrote this book called Chokehold. And he talks about the political class and law enforcement and majority white electorates have transformed the Black man in America into a symbol of criminality. So the experience of Black men in the US is that Black men are in a constant chokehold. Blacks make up about, they gave us 13% of the US population, but they account for 40% of people who are behind bars. 60% of the people in prison today are people of color. And this is a scary one. 1 out of every 3 Black boys born today can expect to go to prison at some time in his life, as can 1 in 6 Latino boys, compared to 1 in 17 white boys. And Black males continue to receive sentences 19% longer than white males convicted of similar crimes. Think about this trauma. 11% of Black boys, Black children, has a parent incarcerated. 33.5% of Latino and 1.8% white children have a parent who's incarcerated. No matter what your race or ethnicity, these percentages are horrible and unacceptable. Black men still continue to be admitted to prison on drug charges at rates that are 20 to 50 times those of white men. Prosecutors, think about that, they're bound to pursue mandatory minimum sentences for Black people twice as often as they do for whites charged with the same offense. Looking at Florida's population, Florida's ratio is 52% of the state is white. The prison population in Florida among the whites, 35.6%. The Black population in Florida is 50.9%. I'm sorry, 15.5%. But blacks represent 45.4% of the prison population. Hispanic represent 26.8% of the population and 12.2% of the prison population. And there's mysterious history behind what is going on in our country. You will recall in 1969 to 1974 were the years where Richard Nixon was president. In 71, he declared war on drugs, stating that drug abuse was public enemy #1. So, the question you might have is, how did the United States entangle itself in this policy of drug prohibition that really hasn't yielded very much good, a lot of misery? And then there was John Ehrlichman, and some of you, old enough to remember Haldeman, Ehrlich, Mitchell, and Dean. There was a song out about these guys. John Ehrlich was a domestic policy chief and a key figure in the Watergate scandal. And he admitted in an interview, and that was later written in the Harper's Magazine in 1994, he admitted that the war on drugs was created as a political tool to fight blacks and hippies, criminalized black people and the fear of black people. And he said, we could make it illegal to, we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war back then, Vietnam War, or blacks by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Ehrlichman said, of course we did. This was the first major effort to criminalizing the possession of drugs like heroin and marijuana. And then you had the Reagan years, massive increase in incarceration for non-violent drug crimes. And then in '86, Congress passed the Anti-Drug Act, which established the mandatory minimum prison sentences for certain drug offenses. And between 1993 and 1997, I spent 4 years. I'm also an attorney. I spent 4 years in an effort to get a personal friend released from prison. We grew up together and I knew him since he was 3. We were 3. He was serving a 15-year mandatory minimum in federal prison. So I have wrote the judge in this case and told him, my client has been rehabilitated. He's doing great work, and the court received hundreds of letters from business people and community people about what a wonderful job this gentleman was doing with the young people. And the judge wrote me back, said, dear sir, your client has obviously reformed himself and should not be in prison. But because of the mandatory minimums, my hands are tied. So he spent another 10 years in prison until he was released and came out, and 2 years later, he died of a pancreatic problem. And then in 2010, this author named Michelle Alexander wrote this book, The New Jim Crow. And she was referring to mass incarceration of Black is the new Jim Crow. And she talked about it creating an undercaste, not class, but CASTE, where Blacks are relegated by law to second-class status. Of course, they would be excluded from juries and employment opportunities and housing education and many other benefits. 2015, possession of crack that was associated with crack cocaine, which was associated with blacks, led to conviction 18 times more frequently than possession of powder cocaine, which is mostly had been associated with whites. Now that gap has since narrowed. And then those blacks who are not incarcerated still have a target on their backs. Trayvon Martin, 2012, Sanford, Florida. Security guard Zimmerman killed him. He was visiting his father in a complex. Michael Brown, 18-year-old kid in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014, killed by the police. Remember Eric Gardner, a New York guy selling cigarettes? He was killed by the police in public with a chokehold. And then there was Gene Botham in 2018, a black man who was an accountant, was shot and killed in his apartment by a white female officer. Somehow she mistook his apartment for her apartment, and she killed him. You remember the jogger, Ahmaud Arbery, 2020? He was jogging through the community, and he was killed. But I would call the vigilante group. Then you had Breonna Taylor, 2020. Police had the wrong address and served a warrant on her and killed her in her bedroom. Also in 2020, remember George Floyd? You may not remember this name, Donnella Frazier, but she was the 17-year-old teenager whose phone went viral and showed the world how he was killed by the chokehold. And then we had one more, 2021, a 20-year-old black male was shot by Kim Potter, who was a white veteran cop. She mistook her taser for her gun, and she killed her. So, you know, that is so much to digest over the short period of time that all of these killings happened. And well, one of the things I did when I came to Florida was join Light of the World International Church, and we were just starting a social justice ministry, and we thought it was maybe we needed to do something in the ministry that was concrete. So on April 30th, 2021, we had developed a 32-page resource guide for returning citizens and others. And we structured that guide around, what if I'm homeless? Who can help me get a job? How do I apply for food stamps and cash assistance? Where can I find legal help regarding my children? How can I replace my personal identification documents? Where do I find resources? Immediately upon my release from incarceration, what other services are available to me before my release from incarceration? Well, one of the first organizations we contacted was Project 180, and Barbara was just wonderful. She shared all of her resources concerning the programs at Project 180, and she gave me a handful of other organizations that we should reach out to, and we did. I'm thankful to her that 32-page resource guides for returning citizen has been a big hit. So we distributed that to maybe 200 different organizations.
Harold, I'm sure a question is going to be, as we begin to move into our discussion, but before we do, I want to ask the question, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us before we move into answering some questions from the audience or people who are online?
Well, I'll just hold the rest of it and try to weave that in whatever the questions might be focused on.
Great. Well, thank you. And before we open it up, thank you to our three speakers for this, this fabulous opportunity to hear from you. I'm sure people are going to be interested in how to get your resource directory. And Annalise, I don't know. Yes, Annalise is going to tell everybody. So we'll start with that and then open it up to everybody.
Yeah, I will be sending that guide out along with the recap of tonight's event. So that'll go out later this week with the recording of tonight, and as well as how to reach out to Project 180, all the resources that will all be included for everyone who tuned in tonight, as well as anyone who's just on our mailing list or registered for the event. So you guys will have access to that and be able to share it and distribute it, go through it as well. So
Great.
yeah.
Thank you. Now, I know there was a question earlier. I think somebody had a question for Mark. Are you still on, or to ask that question? Yes, I see a hand. Yes, Logan.
How you doing? I want to commend you guys for what you're doing. I'm up in New York City. So
Yay.
how are you guys doing? And I am formerly incarcerated. And the young man that spoke earlier, the brother who spoke, he hit some pretty good points on the head. But also what they should know about us is we get tired of telling our story too. Because every time we turn around, we have to relive that time or relive the things that we do. Fortunately for me, when I came out, I was just a motivator. So right now, what I do is I work with justice-involved individuals such as myself, and I actually help them fill out the paperwork. That's why I was happy when you said your program helps them fill out the paperwork coming out to get IDs and things like that. Anybody coming out of an institution, the institution is supposed to provide them with those life documents, Social Security card, birth certificate, ID. So that's the institution is supposed to do that federally. They're supposed to do that because if you want to stop somebody from returning when they come out on parole, you know that if a cop stops them, there's something called a technicality, and if you don't have ID on you, you go right back. But I do enjoy your program. Right now, I work for the city of New York. They're felon friendly. So I applaud and I champion what you guys do. Whenever you guys give other recordings, please let me know. I have a podcast called Justice Involved that I give every second Friday of the month, where we talk about new laws and new resources for the justice involved. I don't want to take up too much time, but I do thank you. I believe that you guys are angels because this is what we need.
Great.
Very
Well,
good.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in, Logan, all the way from New York. It's wonderful to hear your voice down here in Florida. I'm from New York, so it's especially wonderful to hear
Okay.
your voice. So thank you. Make me feel like I'm home. Other comments, questions for our speakers?
There's Mike.
Mike?
Your Mike.
Sure. Hi, thank you. I'm not going to take a lot of time with this. One of the Sarasota Strong folks asked that I be on this call to see if there was anything that Multicultural Health Institute might have to offer. I wish we had another house for you, Barbara, but we don't. But we do have some things that actually I'm very glad that I did come onto this call at her suggestion. And I'm going to contact you through the contact information that Annalise provides. So I won't take up time on the call for that. Could I make one comment to Harold's presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah, Harold and I were both in Maryland. We talked about this. I was about as far away from the Baltimore, Washington area as you could be, where Harold was. And our small town, the only industry was prisons. And the reason was because when they cleaned out all the Black men from the family neighborhoods in Baltimore, they wanted to send them so far away that families couldn't visit or would have a very difficult time visiting.
Yeah.
And I volunteered in the maximum security prison there for many years. And I just want to say that I've always kept in mind that prisons are dehumanizing for everyone who's there,
Yeah.
for the prisoners, but also for the guards, for the social workers. It's just a dehumanizing institution for everyone. One guard that I knew left his shift one night, sat in his car behind the prison and shot himself in the head. And so it's, everyone is affected and dehumanized in that kind of environment. And we just, I think, need to be aware of that. Barbara, I will contact you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Also, there was a question that was just posted in the chat about elder prisoners coming out of jail. Is there anything special that we should be looking at or addressing or being sensitive to in terms of older adults who are coming out of the prison system? And any comments about that from our speakers, or thoughts about the person who would the person who had the question like to say a little bit more? Posted in the chat. I'm looking.
I can tell you, we can take that question.
Oh, that's
if you
Sarah.
like.
Okay.
Would you like to talk about? Speak really loudly.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, speak up a little bit.
So can you guys hear me? We have a good guy in a program that has just.
We can't hear you, Mark.
Is it on? Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. We have an older gentleman that has came home from prison that is in our program. He just did like 27 years or 28 years. And he's like, we're all trying to teach him the way, like, because he's new to everything out here. And like, so they offer the same things to the older people as they do youngers. It's not just for us younger people, it's for everybody who wants to change and who wants a better life. It's like a better way. It's to help. No, they don't discriminate age, color, however long you've been down, your charges. It's all about tattoos. It's all about, us being better and helping, caring and helping us get back into society.
Right.
Can I chime in?
Yes, please.
Sorry, Mark, I just heard it. One of the things that just about everybody is facing when they come back is they can come into program housing like ours, or maybe go into a halfway house or something like that, but there's no housing after. There's no affordable housing after in this area. And that is one of the main things people face. In fact, I know, Mark, do you want to say something about that? Because that's a huge factor for anybody, no matter what age.
Yes, I mean, I myself has been looking for quite some time for a place to go, and it is hard because everything is expensive, and because of my background checks, and nobody wants to accept you because of your background and stuff like that. So the affordable living thing and finding people to give you a chance is a big problem that I see. And that's one of the biggest problems that I'm having right now.
Mm-hmm. Right. And affordable housing is a major challenge for our community. We actually have a crisis in terms of not being able to, we don't have sufficient affordable housing for lots of people right now. Just before we move on for 1 second from Sarah's question, what, people, let's say to myself, older people coming out of prison. I mean, they're in a long prison term. They finally get out, they're in their 60s. Well, employment, it becomes not necessary. I mean, they're kind of looking at a different time in their life. Employment may not be number one for them. How do you think, I mean, are there some special things we should be focusing on for that population group, that might be a little bit different than for somebody in their 30s or 40s.
There are a couple of places around town that will hire. There's a call center, I think it's on Fruitville, that will hire. I mean, not everybody wants to do physical labor, and unfortunately, that's most of the jobs that are available to individuals who have been incarcerated are physical. But also, I'd like to give a shout out to Career Source. They have been working really hard over the last few years to address the issue of individuals who are coming out. And I believe they're working with older individuals as well who have come out. So if you know somebody who needs a job and they're older, I would definitely send them to Career Source.
Great. But I hope that's helpful to Sarah, who asked the question. I also want to, I know Olivia has something that she'd like to share with the group. So Olivia, if you're on now, that would be great. And talk a little bit about your outreach project. Because everything we've heard so far, people emphasize, all of our speakers, some of our comments, the importance of connection. Whether, when you're coming back into the community, how important it is to have connection among, with, if not family, with friends, with neighbors. And I think that's something that Olivia wants to mention about the project that she has. Olivia? Is she going? Olivia, are you on?
Thank you.
Oh,
hi, everyone. Sorry about that. Everything today has been about what happens when people are released from prison. The Sarasota Prisoner Outreach Project, SPOP for short, works with people while they're still in prison. Everyone on our list is coming back to Sarasota for probation at the end of their sentence. So we thought, why not get involved in their physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being while they're still in prison before they show up at Project 180's doorstep. The intense words of gratitude we get nearly every day from our peeps would blow your mind and shows for sure that we are meeting a huge, otherwise unmet need. So here's a quick overview of how we connect with these people. One, many people in prison have no one on the outside to help them and have no internet access. So we regularly get asked for all different kinds of assistance. Here's just a few examples. A man was languishing in the prison hospital for 3 months, waiting for a mammogram. The doctor thought he had breast cancer. Finally, I called the assistant warden, who said he couldn't help me. There's a schedule, blah, blah, blah. But the next day, the test was scheduled and the mammogram happened 2 days later. When the stimulus checks became available, most of the prisons made no effort to get tax forms to the inmates. We mailed in dozens of tax forms with instructions, and then more instructions about what to do if you got some, but not all 3 of the checks. Otherwise, there's no way any of these people would have been able to access those funds. One guy was just desperate to know more about the James Webb Telescope. We do everything we're asked to do, except for the things that we don't do, which we could talk about another time. 2, we regularly send in materials that we write on a wide range of topics: legislative and regulatory activity, getting an education in prison. We're now looking for someone to more fully develop this topic, where to write to for free books. We send resources for them to share with family members. We're looking for an LGBTQ content writer. We've sent materials on doing yoga in prison, parenting in prison, issues relating to sex offender registration. We wish we had someone to write about stuff going on in Sarasota. This past year, we had a book club. The book was Permission to Feel, about how to better identify and self-manage your emotions. We sent the book and study questions to everyone who signed up. It was really a great success. And please let us know if you have any suggestions for a book that we could use for this year's book club. 3, direct contact with inmates, which is via the prison email system, is the bread and butter of the project. Conversations range from just chatting. One guy sent us jokes every few days for a month. Other times it's a person's deepest dark secret that he has never told anyone before. And of course, everything in between. Direct contact with inmates is definitely not for everyone, but it is profoundly rewarding for those who can handle it. And please know that everyone other than me uses a pseudonym, so your identity and location are never disclosed. 4, several months ago, the Department of Corrections issued a proposed rulemaking pertaining to visitation. The rule was horrible. We sent out instructions on how to write a letter to the prison administration, urging them to at least schedule a public hearing on the rule. We were doing community organizing in the Florida prison system, which, as far as we know, has never been done before. The enthusiasm with which this request was met was overwhelming. Dozens of people told me they wrote the letter and got many people in their dorm to do so as well. One guy said he posted our instructions in every dorm in his prison. I don't think I need to explain how empowering and healing this was for everyone who participated. We are definitely going to do more of this in 2023. So if anything I've said here resonates with you, my contact information will be in the chat. We can discuss different ways you can get involved. And of course, donations are needed and greatly appreciated. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about this.
Thank you. Thank you, Olivia. That's wonderful. You're doing terrific work.
Thank you very much.
Really, and making those connections, it's just so important while people are still in prison before they come home. To wait until they come back to the community is too late. And I think
That's what we thought.
that's a theme that we have heard over and over again this evening. So thank you. Andy, I see your hand raised. Do you have a question or comment?
Yes, I actually do have a question or a comment or both. There was something that Mark said early on in his talk that really tugged at my heartstrings. Mark, you said something like the first time you were watching Project 180, and you said the first time they show a sign of kicking me out, I'm out of here.
Mhm.
Right? You said something like that, right?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
that is so classic of somebody who's been hurt in the past, right? People who've been hurt, trauma survivors, believe that they're to blame for everything that's happened to them, and they're convinced that they're going to fail, right? And so they're watching for it. They're watching for that sign that they're going to get kicked out, that somebody's going to come down on them, that they're going to fail. And my question is really for Barbara. When people believe that it's their fault and they are eventually going to fail, it can look a lot like they're hypersensitive or they're even paranoid or whatever. How do you work with your staff to get them to understand that that is just a normal reaction to the pain that your folks have been through, and that they need to sit with that and not react to it? I'm just wondering, how do you help your staff see what's behind that?
My staff has been through it too. And when issues come up, all of us try to listen and really hear what's behind the words. And then I would say through humor and through probably too much advice giving, we get through it together. But we really try to let people know that we're in it with them.
What a beautiful answer.
Yes, that's fabulous.
Thank you. Mark,
So-
do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, Mark, it looks like you're getting ready to say something.
I mean, it's pretty much true because there was times when I was ready and I was like, I was ready to leave and I was ready to run and just take off. And Barbara and Mike and there's a couple and Ian, there's been a couple people that, talk to me, but I'm stubborn, I'm hard-headed. So when I get in my head, I'm always like, no, 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 no. But I still listen, but I still try to act stubborn. And then they show like they care, well, I can't say show like because I do care, but they and it's like, you don't want to let people down that care about you, so it's like it's relaxing and soothing, I guess you would say. It helps you be like, okay, well, and they let you know, well, if something does happen, like in my situation, like, well, if something does happen, we got your back, and it's I guess it's comforting to know that. So I fought myself through what I was thinking because I knew there was people in my corner and it would be okay in the end, no matter what.
Right.
So.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Are there other questions of Mark, of our speakers, Harold, Barbara, or other comments? We're beginning to near the end of the evening. So any last comments, questions people have, now is the time. Oh, I see somebody, Teresa. Your hand's up.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I have a question for Mark. I've been in touch with a guy who was sentenced at the age of, he was arrested at 16, sentenced at 17. He just came home 5 months ago from doing a 50-year sentence.
Oh my God.
He's like 67 now. One of the things recently, I'd like to give me some advice because since he's been home, of course, the cell phone is an issue. He had been going so long, 50 years since he was sentenced. He was arrested at 16, sentenced at 17. His mother has passed. He has a brother that's actually a pastor, but he was traumatized when the brother went to prison because the mother was so upset. So it traumatized the whole family. So they hadn't been in touch with each other. So he's dependent upon organizations and family. He didn't even come to Philadelphia. He went to, this guy took him in that he didn't even know in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. One of the things that gets him frustrated, I like to ask you, how can I deal with this? He's at a point now where he's in a slump. When he came out, he was gun-ho. He wanted to try to visit with families. He didn't know where most of them were. He was jumping in all these different organizations that fight against the unjust prison system in Pennsylvania. And now he's in a slump with, I'm tired of asking people questions. I spoke with him 2 days ago. I said, what's going on? I haven't spoken to you. He said, I'm tired of having to ask everyone how to do this. I'm forgetting things. I think I really have memory loss. I'm 67. I said, you may need to see a physician. That's one of the things. And talk to someone. You just did 50 years. So what do we tell people coming home who they are gun-ho in the beginning and then they get stuck? They feel ashamed. They don't want to keep asking the same questions of how to do something.
I mean, I myself, I can understand and relate to what he was saying because when I came home, this technology nowadays is crazy. And I've just recently, I've hit them spots where it's our pride, it's the pride in us, and we don't want to we're tired of asking for help. We don't like to ask for help.
Okay.
We believe as men that we should be able to take care of ourselves and respond and things and not have to ask. But like my only thing is like, if you can help him, show him that there is people out there that still care and still want to help. I have a friend that works with Project 180 named Chuck that would probably, would be more than glad to, help him out and assist him and, show him that there is people that care. I don't know his number right off the top of my head. It's in my phone, but my phone's at the house. But I'm sure Barbara or somebody could get it. But he would be a good candidate to help him out in any way, shape, or form that he could. But
Okay.
and it's hard to understand people like that because it's like we don't want to give up, but it's just like we hit that point where it's just like we're tired and we don't want to ask for help because we feel it makes us feel lesser than to always and not know what's going on. But my best thing that I can say is never give up and continue to like push yourself onto him and tell him that and show him that there is people that care and that people are out here for us. And it's hard. It's a hard road. I can definitely say that. It gets bumpy, but the light's brighter at the other side.
Okay. I
Well,
thank you. The biggest thing you said was his pride, and I hadn't checked into that. And we do have a circle around him. And we're also helping to groom the family. Because some of them didn't even know him. He's been going 50 years. Some of them had never met him. So I thank you. And you know what? We'll continue to work with him and give them as much. But that pride thing, I should have guessed it, but that is a big part of it. Thank you, and I wish you the best.
thank
Yes, ma'am.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Teresa, for that question. And thank you, Mark, for your response and for sharing that information. I think that meant a lot. So we are getting to the end of this evening. And so I want to take the opportunity to thank our wonderful speakers for participating. It really, each one of you had a different perspective. Each one of you really added to this conversation and sparked comments and interest in our participants. So I thank you, wonderful speakers. I thank you to everybody who joined this conversation, for those of you who listened, who contributed. Hopefully everybody walks away with taking something back from this evening's program, to whether your work or people that you know. It's such an important topic for us as a community. And the three of you really help raise awareness for our community of what some of the things are that we need to do to be a better community, and a community that cares for itself. And as Barbara said, it means caring for everyone, for all of our neighbors, not just for some of our neighbors. So I do thank you. Annalise would yell at me if I would be remiss in just telling people that there will be a follow-up, what we call a deeper dive, an actual live conversation or on the same topic. That's going to happen next month on February 27th from 6 to 7:30. And we're not quite sure where yet, but once we have the details, we'll send that out to everybody. So there's more opportunity to come back together and really kind of get into this subject area and learn more about it. So please keep an eye out for your emails, and know that February 27th, we're going to have another opportunity to get together in person. Also, this whole evening was recorded. It's going to be available right after we're done. So if you missed portions of it or want to go back and hear a little bit more about what Project 180 offers, or a little bit more about their pillars, which I think are very important, a little bit more Mark's story, please feel free. You can go back or share it with somebody who couldn't make it tonight, who you think might be interested, in the subject. So I do encourage you. We appreciate any feedback you may have for us about topics for the future, because we really want to focus on topics that are meaningful to our community, like tonight. So if you have any suggestions, we have our just email us at sarasotastrong@gmail.com. That's sarasotastrong@gmail.com with any comments or suggestions. And please, if you're interested, get involved with SRQ Strong. It's a great organization. I'm happy to say that. And I think I'm pretty objective. Go to our website at www.sarasotastrong.org, and please take a look and see how you may want to get involved. So I thank you all for joining us tonight, and wish you all a wonderful rest of the evening and wonderful week ahead. So thank you all so much. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.